I've always had a fascination for Ouija signs, but I would never play with them because I've heard enough stories of which I could not sleep. A friend of my mother once played with a Ouija board when she was a teen. She just asked things like, how many children would she have if she would marry, and with whom? The board said she would have 2 children. It also spelled out a name for her husband to be. For privacy reasons, I will call him Eric. So guess what? 11 years later, she met Eric. They got married and have 2 daughters. Nothing bad happened, but keep in mind that Ouija boards are not toys. I was a freshman in high school when I became friends with Sammy. Sammy was 2 years older than me, and she was the girl no one wanted to get into a fight with. I'll describe her for a minute. She was tall, skinny girl with long black hair that fell down her shoulders and back. She had red highlights, and now that I think about it, she could definitely use a trim back then. She always wore dark makeup, and maybe it's a red flag for many, but I thought she was cool, and I secretly wanted to be her friend because she didn't have any. She was yelled and laughed at. The popular kids called her the voodoo chick. Despite the age difference, Sammy and I became good friends, and I didn't understand why people made fun of her. Yes, she was different, but didn't we all experience a period in which we were weird and different? It was just before the summer holidays that Sammy and I went to a house party that was hosted by a classmate. Around 11:45, we were all sitting on the couch around a glass table with a Ouija board on it. Sammy had taken it with her. She must have thought it was cool to bring. Anyway, we asked it stupid questions. Obviously, we played around with it, not knowing the damage it could cause. We took it more seriously when we noticed that nobody was playing anymore. But yet, the planchette kept moving. Things moved on their own as well, and Sammy seemed to become happier every time something creepy happened. She kept saying things like, "Don't worry, she won't harm us." We never got an explanation about that though. The board answered all questions, and we didn't even touch it. I didn't want anything to do with it anymore, but Sammy wanted to be tough and asked, "When will I die?" It took a while before the planchette moved. It moved to 6. But what does that mean? 6 hours, 6 minutes, 6 days, weeks, months, years? We laughed it off as another joke because we were all so scared. We closed the circle and ended the night. Sammy didn't come to school after the summer holidays. Nobody knows why. She no longer wanted to contact with anyone, and she didn't see anyone anymore. I just graduated from high school and read newspapers during lunch at the office. When I turn the page, my heart stops as I see, "Rest in peace, dear Sammy." According to the page, she committed suicide without saying goodbye or leaving a note behind. The only thing she left was the old Ouija board and 6 diaries. 5 years ago, I was a senior in high school, on top of the world, thinking that nothing could touch me. You know the feeling. As a kid, when you were the oldest in the school and you and your friends thought everything was incredibly easy. This particular night, we found out we were not invincible. In fact, we were the exact opposite. It was just another Friday night, and my friends and myself were up to our normal shenanigans. Movie, cards, board games, nothing too crazy. After the games had come to an end, we went back to the closet to find another to play when my friend Tom reached to the back of the closet and found an old Ouija board. As he pulled the box out and brushed off the dust that had accumulated over what just had been years, he glanced at us with a grin on his face. "Who's interested?" he asked. We all remained silent as we surveyed the room. None of us wanted to be the one who was too scared to participate. Collectively, we all agreed that we would try it out, some of us more hesitant than others. As Tom set down the box, another friend chimed in that we should go to the cemetery to add to the experience. Ignoring the obviously ignoramus idea, we all loaded up into the car and set out for the cemetery. Upon arrival, we were all a bit timid. There was an eerie fog that conveniently cast over the visible parts of the cemetery. We drove to the middle and broke out the board. None of us really knowing what to do, we all placed our fingers on the piece and began our questions. Is anyone here? How old are you? What was your profession? What is your name? The questions went on and the answers were flowing. After several questions, we were able to put together that we were communicating with a man by the name of Greg, who was once a policeman that got tangled up with the wrong crowd when he was just 35 years old. Greg went on to tell us more and more, and at this point, we were all flabbergasted, and we began to accuse one another of moving the piece. In the midst of the accusations, a set of headlights pierced through the milky fog, and all of our stomachs started turning. As the car approached, we all looked at one another, not sure what to do. The car parked behind us, and a man exited and began walking towards us. I was in the back and looked out the rear window and noticed a set of lights on top of the parked car. Somewhat relieved, I blurted out it was a cop. I say somewhat relieved because we were technically trespassing on private property at 2 a.m. in the morning. The man approached the window and knocked with his flashlight, peering into the car to see what was going on. Tom, the driver, began lowering the window to speak with the officer. The gentleman began questioning us and asking what we were doing. We replied that we were simply messing around with a Ouija board and that we did not mean any harm. We told the officer that we would leave. To our surprise, he did not seem mad at all. He was concerned that we were either drinking or doing drugs, and when he saw that we were not drinking or doing drugs, he seemed at ease. Simply told us that we could not be here past dark and that we had to leave. Everyone was relieved, but me. I sat in the back seat, unable to talk. The officer walked away, and the rest of my friends let out a sigh of relief. When I was finally able to form words, I uttered the question, "Someone tell me they saw his name badge." They all replied, "No, why does that matter?" I stuttered again and said, "His name was Greg." Tom immediately started the car and followed after the cop car and was able to flag him down right before we exited the cemetery. We rolled down the window, trying to think of an excuse to get his name and prove that I was not crazy. The others were all quiet when I spoke up from the back. "Thanks for being easy on us, officer." Then I paused, waiting for him to fill in his name. "Greg," he chimed back. "Don't worry about it. I was a kid like you once." After that, he rolled up his window and drove off. The car was silent until I spoke up. "I told you guys," I explained. Everyone was shaking. Everyone was talking about this, that all their different theories the whole ride home. Once we got back to Tom's house, we went on the local sheriff's website trying to find our friend Greg. We looked at pictures of all different officers, but there was nobody by the name of Greg. We were all scared, hearing things that was probably just our mind playing tricks on us. All of our hearts beating wildly as we sat in the basement talking about what exactly happened. Whether you believe in Ouija boards or not, what happened that night will stick with each and every one of us. Too many variables lined up that night for it to be a coincidence. Ouija boards to contact ghosts or some dead loved one from beyond the grave, while me and my friends have. I've always been confused about the whole supernatural and strange elements in our world, and I truly do not know how to think about it. The power of belief is truly a powerful thing, and it can shape and change our society for better or for worse, and it controls our day-to-day actions. When someone or anyone for that matter, believes in anything, they will always be capable of doing many crazy things for the sake of their belief. Belief is our perception of everything around us, and it even forms our opinions of people. I have always wanted to see a ghost, and I mean real-life ghost. It could be any kind of ghost, just floating around or moving something. I just want to know what it feels like to be in the presence of one. I have watched so many videos of ghosts in people's houses, abandoned buildings, and people using Ouija boards to contact ghosts as well. It annoys me how people start screaming or running off quickly whichever room they may be in, wherever a ghost or some supernatural entity may presently reside in. I always tell myself, if I ever catch a ghost, I'm gonna stay with the ghost for as long as possible. Now, my two friends, Patrick and Jake, came over to my house to play with the Ouija board I had bought. The three of us were super excited to use it, and hopefully something will reply back to us. I dimmed the lights in the living room, and my parents were out, so we had the whole house to ourselves. For the first hour, literally nothing happened, and the surge of true disappointment started to come over all of us. Then, out of boredom, I decided to move the Ouija board cup myself and pretend that it was a ghost moving it. Jake and Patrick were overjoyed, and I pretended to be excited at the same time, and we were all accusing each other of moving the Ouija board cup, but the three of us denied it. Now, Jake had an ex-girlfriend who committed suicide last year, and I don't know what went through my mind at the time, but I decided to move the cup pretending it was some ghost and slowly moving it to the letters about Jake's ex-girlfriend's suicide. The three of us all had our hands on the Ouija board cup, but both Jake and Patrick still didn't know it was actually me moving it. At first, I did find it funny, but when Jake started tearing up, I started to regret what I had been doing and started to realize how stupid I had been. Patrick and Jake truly believed that Jake's ex-girlfriend, who is dead, was moving the Ouija board cup. To this day, I give myself hell for doing such a thing. I don't know why I thought it would be cool or funny to move the Ouija board cup. It came to a point where it kind of went too far, and I was moving the cup to words where it spelled, "I love you, Jake," or "I am heartbroken, Jake." Jake was torn to pieces, and after 3 hours, we decided to stop, and throughout the night, Jake and Patrick kept texting me, telling me how creeped out they were. Jake was in an emotional state, and I wanted to tell him the truth, that it was actually me moving the cup, but I was too scared about what it might do to our friendship. Jake and Patrick tried organizing more Ouija board nights, but I kept calling it off. The cup never moved on the Ouija board when it was just Patrick and Jake, and they both begged me to come back and join them. I eventually did join them another night in Patrick's house, and this time when I moved the Ouija board cup, unknown to Jake and Patrick, I decided to pick on Patrick this time. His parents are divorced. Patrick was stunned and couldn't believe what was happening. And after 3 hours of playing with the Ouija board, we eventually called it quits. Both Patrick and Jake were quite depressed, and I was just digging myself into a deeper hole now. Jake then texted me that whenever I am with them, the Ouija board always seems to move, and I replied saying it was just a case of unusual luck, or maybe I have some unusual aura or energy around me. Jake then told me that he wanted to play the Ouija board again sometime, but just the two of us, as he wanted to speak with his ex-girlfriend again. I tried deadering the event, but Jake was persistent, and eventually I gave in, and I was able to go to Jake's house and play the Ouija board with him. I did it again that night, moving the cup, swearing that I wasn't moving it, and Jake himself was swearing that he wasn't moving the cup as well. I secretly moved the cup to make up sentences where it was about his relationship with his dead ex-girlfriend. It got too emotional, and Jake ended it, and the next day I hear from his mother that he hung himself in his room. I couldn't believe at what I had just done, and there was no note left as well. A couple weeks after Jake's funeral, Patrick wanted to use the Ouija board to try and contact Jake. tried everything to deter Patrick from playing the Ouija board, but once again I couldn't stop him. I was at Patrick's house and I told myself I wasn't going to move the Ouija board cup anymore. There was a silence in the air and Patrick was full on concentrating on the cup and calling out Jake until it actually started to move. I accused Patrick of moving the cup, but he swore to me he wasn't, and he took his hand off the cup. It was just my hand now, and the cup was moving on its own now, and I couldn't believe what it spelled out. Me and Patrick were calling out to Jake, and he spelled out my name, which read, William the Cup Mover, and I just threw the Ouija board on the ground and screamed. I promised myself to never play the Ouija board again. Ever. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell beside it and select the box. This way you'll be notified for any new videos. Thank you for watching.